nations reshaped, societies reshaped, concepts of existence reshaped. Wars ravaged the world. At an accelerated rate, humankind's understanding of itself, and its universe, expanded. This is Session 8, Enlightenment, in a course titled, History as an Evolution of Consciousness, and that is an aspect of a larger view, Evolution of Consciousness Theory. In this session, we venture a step closer to the present, and the familiar, the Age of Enlightenment. With Europe locked in the struggle between Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation, and the papacy's Roman and Spanish Inquisitions, Western civilization rose from the Renaissance, into the Age of Enlightenment. Such dates to about the year 1600. In many ways, advance during the Age of Enlightenment, rests on the concept of deism, or the belief that God made the world to function according to rational laws. By studying God's handiwork, people could understand the world, and even make it better. In no small way, this approach to refinement was furthered by three great thinkers, and one great general. In the late Renaissance, we had Copernicus. In the Age of Enlightenment, we had Galileo and Newton. Also in the Age of Enlightenment, we had Napoleon. Born on February 19, 1473, in the town of Thorn, Poland, Copernicus, in his work De Revolutione Orbium Coelestium, or On the Revolutions of the Celestial Spheres, described planetary movement where the Sun, rather than the Earth, was at the center of the solar system. In the Copernican model, the Earth revolves yearly around the Sun, and rotates daily on its axis. It also has a precession cycle, or wobble. The Copernican model allowed the planets to be ordered according to the time it took them to travel around the Sun. The model also accounted for the daily and yearly motion of the Sun and stars, and for the retrograde of Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. In addition, the model explained the fact that Venus and Mercury never moved more than a certain distance from the Sun. Though explanatory, the Copernican model had a difficulty. The idea that the Sun, rather than the Earth, was at the center of the solar system, and thus was at the center of the universe, contradicted the biblical notion that the Earth was at the center of the universe. As the century turned, the conflict associated with the Copernican model came to center on one man, Galileo. Born Galileo Galilei, near Pisa, on February 15, 1564, Galileo was destined to clash with the Church from early in his life. His father, Vincenzo Galilei, was a musician, active in the revolution from medieval polyphony, or pieces composed of two or more independent melodic parts, to harmonic modulation, or pieces where the music passes from one key or tonality to another, by means of a melody or chord progression. His father instilled in Galileo the belief that an individual's adherence to a rigid theory of music, or of anything, would stifle innovation. Galileo carried into adulthood an unflinching need to challenge the status quo. In 1613, Galileo, whose belief in observation and measurement founded empiricism and modern science, predicted victory for the Copernican model. Early in 1616, Copernican books were subjected to censorship by edict, and the Jesuit Cardinal Robert Bellarmine instructed Galileo to no longer hold or defend the concept that the Earth moves about the Sun. In 1624, Galileo began a book published under the name of Dialogue on the Two Chief World Systems, but that was commonly called Dialogue. In the book, he argued for the Copernican system. In 1633, Galileo was ordered to appear before the Roman Catholic Inquisition, where he was found guilty of heresy. Sentenced to spend the rest of his life under house arrest, Galileo died at Arcetri near Florence on January 8, 1642. Copernicanism, and Galileo's ideas of empiricism, however, would re-emerge. Isaac Newton was born on December 25, 1642, according to the Julian calendar, and on January 4, 1643, according to the recently adopted Gregorian calendar, at Woolsthorpe in Lincolnshire. His mother sent him to grammar school in Grantham, and, when he was old enough to attend, to Trinity College at the University of Cambridge. During his time at the university, Newton avoided the established curriculum, and pursued his own interests in mathematics and the natural sciences. In particular, he was fascinated by a new philosophy of science, that treated nature as a mechanism. In 1666, Newton achieved his first success in mathematics. He realized that the operation used to draw a line tangent to a curve, was the inverse of the operation used to calculate the area swept by the curve. He joined the two operations with a technique called the fluxional method, and by doing so founded the mathematics of calculus. Sometime after 1684, Newton derived three fundamental laws of motion, Newton's first, second, and third laws. He integrated his laws with those of planetary movement, to derive the law of universal gravitation. This law states that all bodies in space and on Earth attract each other with a force that varies inversely as the square of their distance. In 1687, Newton published his theory in his book, Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. This work thrust Newton to the center of Enlightenment science. There, he faced an accusation from the English physicist Robert Hooke, that he had stolen his gravitational theory from him. That same year, 1687, Newton led efforts against King James II, to make Cambridge University a Catholic institution. After the English Revolution in 1688, James fled the country, and the university elected Newton as one of its representatives in Parliament. Unable to deal with his duties before the public, Newton sought refuge in alchemy and mysticism. To his colleagues, he showed increasing symptoms of mental disorder. His professional life wrought with allegations of plagiarism. Newton died in 1727. On the pragmatic side of enlightened life, an increased reliance on money and wage labor led to a shift in power and wealth, from feudal nobility and the Roman Catholic Church to middle-class merchants. It also led to feelings of nationalism that in 1688 in England gave rise to the sovereignty of the Parliament, and that, entwined with the Industrial Revolution, led to the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783, and the French Revolution, 1789 to 1799, and the rule of Napoleon I. During the French Revolution, Napoleon I, or Napoleon Bonaparte, commanded the French army in Italy, from where he led victories against Egypt and Austria. After his fleet was destroyed by Britain's Admiral Horatio Nelson, in the Battle of the Nile in 1798, he returned to France, and initiated a coup that ended the revolution, and placed him in power. In 1800, he crossed the Alps to defeat an Austrian force, and, in 1804, after Britain had attacked France at sea, he proclaimed himself emperor. In 1805, Austria and Russia allied with Britain, and Napoleon defeated an Austro-Russian force at Austerlitz. Prussia threw her might behind Russia, and, in 1806, Napoleon destroyed the Prussian army at Jena and Auerstedt, and the Russian army at Friedland. In 1807, Tsar Alexander I allied with Napoleon, who that same year conquered Portugal, and appointed his brother Joseph King of Spain. By 1810, Napoleon ruled nearly all of Europe, and had begun sweeping economic and governmental changes. He abolished the remnants of feudalism, and established the Code Napoleon. This granted citizens freedom of religion, and each state a constitution, that provided for a parliament, Bill of Rights, and male suffrage. With the ambition to one day fund and provide universal public education, Napoleon put schools under central administration, and opened higher education to all who qualified. In 1812, Napoleon's alliance with Alexander I disintegrated, and he launched an invasion of Russia, that, in the chill climate of the Little Ice Age, from the early 1500s to about 1850, ended in a disastrous retreat from Moscow. Europe united against him, and, in 1814, he abdicated, and was exiled to the Mediterranean island of Elba. In 1815, he escaped, reformed an army, and marched on Paris, which ended with his defeat by an Anglo-Prussian army, at the Battle of Waterloo. Exiled to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic, he remained until his death. Napoleon's reforms laid the groundwork for Europe's modern nation-state. But the emperor's reforms were never fully implemented, and this inspired unrest. Most notable among the uprisings were the European revolutions of 1848. In France, laborers, faced with poverty and deplorable working conditions, demanded economic reform. Poles, Danes, Italians, Germans, Romanians, Hungarians, and others faced similar economic conditions, and demanded suffrage and representative government. Revolts were put down, but left Europe with the concept of liberalism, and, after Karl Marx's publication of the Communist Manifesto in 1848, with the concept of socialism. In contrast with liberalism today, which embraces many of the ideals of socialism, the liberal philosophy was founded on a belief in individual freedom, and limited government, similar to today's libertarianism. By the turn of the 20th century, America had fought the Civil War, and the British Empire stretched to almost every corner of the globe. France and Belgium controlled much of Africa, and Spain controlled much of South and Central America. In China, the Manchu dynasty had risen to power. In Japan, society had advanced from the Shogun period to, under Emperor Matsuhito, modernize its navy, and adopt an American-inspired system of education. What view of the universe did the work of Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton instill in the human mindset? Is this view of the universe prevalent today? With our look at the Age of Enlightenment, we complete Session 8, in our course on humankind's ascent from the standpoint of evolution of consciousness theory. Our course titled, History as an Evolution of Consciousness, continues in Session 9, World War I.